Hi, everyone, and welcome to this webinar session hosted by TELUS Business. Special thank you to Menno Place for joining us today. My name is Christine Lambert, and I'm the Marketing Manager for the Seniors Living Portfolio here at TELUS. We're really proud to be returning as a gold sponsor of this year's BCCPA Virtual Trade Show and to continue to support the evolving ecosystem of seniors communities here in BC. In this session, we hope that you'll learn more about the experience of Menno Place during the pandemic and how they feel that technology helped them, their residents, and the families of their residents during these difficult times. We hope that you enjoy this session, and we can't wait to see you again in person. Thank you. Devon, over to you.
Thanks, Christine, and hello, everybody. My name is Devon Finn. I've been with TELUS for about 7 years now. 3 years ago, I had a special opportunity to move over and specialize in our senior living solutions portfolio. And a couple of years ago, I had the pleasure of meeting Sharon and Kathrin from Menno Place. Sharon and Kathrin, can you please provide a quick intro about who you are and then chat about Menno Place a little bit?
Great. So I'm Kathrin McMath. I'm the Executive Director of Finance and Operations here at Menno Place. I have been at Menno for 12 years and over 20 years in the long-term care health industry.
And I'm Sharon Simpson, and I've been at Menno Place. This is my 9th year. I started in marketing and then communications, and I'm now the Director of Community Enrichment, which is an interesting title, but reflects our goal of making an enriching and continually enriching space for our residents.
Wonderful, thank you. To start things off, could you please chat a little bit about COVID-19 and how, from an operations standpoint and a resident standpoint, you've been navigating through these challenging times?
You go ahead, Kathrin.
Well, it's definitely been challenging and, from the ground running. So when we got the notice of the pandemic, and even kind of monitoring it as of January, and it was just a total need to stay in the communication. I mean, communication was the key to everything. And it was, there was a lot of it, and it changed very often. So we were lucky here at Menno. We've got an amazing leadership team and absolutely phenomenal staff. And so we right away just started our meetings and open discussions and support groups just to kind of stay abreast and informed. And then Sharon can just explain more about kind of the communication strategy. That was really key to the quick movement, cohesive working and support environment, and then our communication to our families and resident and staff.
Yeah, just before COVID, probably a year before, I started a website for families and friends and residents to go to that would have like more insider information. And that website, it just wasn't getting any traction. I was having a hard time launching it. We put our resident handbooks on it, but I didn't have much other content. But it existed and it just hadn't been launched. As soon as we started with COVID, I knew we are going to have so much messaging that has to go to families. We're going to have to train them where to go. And so we launched it that first week and started putting posts on there. It's integrated with an email system so that they get a weekly email from those posts. And it's been a game changer to be able to communicate and have a central location. COVID was probably for everybody in this industry, the fuel behind a lot of changes. Like it just was the motivation. So that was huge. And then we did some social media. We started a Facebook group for family and friends, and that has over 450 people in it now. And that's the first time that we've really done conversation with any, online conversation. It's a private group, but we let everybody who asks to come into that group, and they have the opportunity to speak. And that has really helped to tame some of the rumors and the fears and also the hopes that people have about how we're caring for their loved ones.
Thank you. That's great. Now, before we really dive into the specifics about how you've been helping residents navigate through COVID and through isolation, Kathrin, maybe let's chat about 2018 when we had the opportunity to meet for the first time and this is obviously way before COVID. You were explaining your vision, and Sharon, you as well were explaining your vision for a technology infrastructure to be able to better serve your residents. Could you please touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. So it even started before 2018. Here at Menno, we've been looking at a couple of kind of major projects. We've been trying to get Wi-Fi infrastructure into our apartments for several years. We do know that aging in place, you need technology to support our residents aging in place, and also connecting to their grandchildren who are on social media and on video chats. Our staff use iPods for their everyday work, and so we needed connectivity. So that was a big project that we had looked at several times, and we just didn't have the capital, the hundreds of thousands of dollars that it was going to cost us to put in this infrastructure. So it was always on our kind of on our desks to do, but we never had the means for it. And then the other piece was a communication. We were just looking at basic communication boards for our apartments. Again, we have assisted living and independent living, where we can go more paperless and do current immediate information sharing, recreation of the day, or menu changes or anything like that. And right now it was basically we just couldn't do it, or we were doing it in paper format. So when we were at the trade show at the BC Care Providers a couple of years ago, Sharon actually went to your booth and saw the splash page that the Optic TV provided. And she came running trying to find me and said that I must come visit you and check out this splash page. And it was very basic. It was a screen that comes on in front of the TV, and we could put instant messages on there. Reminder that the bus trip, leaves in 20 minutes or something like that. Yeah. And we finally kind of felt like we had an area to start exploring. And so that was actually the start of kind of an unimaginable relationship between TELUS and Menno, because it just grew from this basic vision to being able to now have a Wi-Fi in all of our apartment buildings without having to pay that upfront capital cost. We have a channel that we can, actually a Menno TV channel that we can communicate with our residents, 24-hour streaming. Our staff are connected with their iPods throughout any of our buildings. And it's just on and on with the innovation that this partnership allowed for us.
Thank you. Sharon, would you like to top up at all?
Well, I mean, when I saw that interface, like at BC Care Providers, as a person that's in marketing and communications, there's not a lot of the tables there at the care conference that are in my area. So all of a sudden there's this beautiful, it just looks like a hotel. You've been to a hotel, you have to go through that menu page and then you can watch your shows. And I couldn't believe that we could have that, because we have 321 suites. And so even if we had a display television in the lobby, it just doesn't reach people, doesn't do the same thing. So yeah, we got pretty excited about that. And so that's what started the conversation. I had been trying for a few years to find a solution that was sustainable. Like, even some of the solutions that are out there are cost per user. And so when you do that times 321, it just becomes really expensive for us to do that. So this has been really great. When COVID started, that was the motivation for us to actually start using the interface properly. And we have one person that we got trained, and she started to do that messaging on the splash pages. And that's just been a game changer for us.
Yeah, and I think we've been able to really learn from each other in this situation, because I remember in 2018 when you described your vision of trying to make Menno digital, trying to enhance the living experience of everyone. TELUS actually came back with a suggestion for deploying tablets within Menno Place for all the residents, and I think there were some great learnings for TELUS and Menno. Could you please touch on how the tablets were originally used and how that evolved over time?
Yes. So what happened was that we wanted. We had previously a camcorder in our chapel that would record the chapel services, and then would go through a TV channel to the residents. And when we switched over to optic TV, that option wasn't available at that time. And so what you described with the TELUS solution, like you always came back with with solutions and with opportunities to be able to make and grow this partnership. So one of the solutions was that we were going to provide 350 tablets to all of our residents in the apartments, which then allowed us to start a recreation program where we wanted to really teach the use of the tablets and use it for recreation programming and video chats. We actually had programs where we had international students across the world that would learn languages. So there was an exchange of languages with our seniors. So the program, it worked. It was a small group that adapted to it. Our recreation did group sessions and then one-on-one sessions. We did have some residents that really weren't interested and they returned their tablet. But because there was, you kind of need that usefulness of it. So some people, if you've got a family member that really wants to video chat, or can help support their loved ones with it, then that worked out well. But if you didn't have that support, it wasn't technology that was easily adopted until COVID.
Nice segue.
So, we have an assisted living building, so we've had to isolate the seniors, and we followed the same practice in our independent living building. So we had 4 buildings where seniors were pretty much isolated in their suites. Even the meals were now brought up to them. And there was, there's definitely that isolation impact and depression and not being able to come out. So they really adopted the live streaming, and we can talk more about that kind of piece. But just the fallout of it is that we actually have residents asking for the tablets back that they had originally returned that they weren't interested in, because they are seeing the benefit of that interaction, the video interaction, the recreation programming that we have in place now, which uses the tablets. And we're ever more expanding on that. Our next steps are having resident video chats and gaming platforms where, they want that tablet. They have the desire to need that technology.
I think too, when we got the technology, it was before COVID. And so we had these tablets, we created an app that would automatically stream whatever we did, so they were used to having this chapel channel. And what we were doing now was having to create programming. So our staff were like, we don't do that. We don't have the time to do that. We don't know how to do that. So we literally had an hour out of the entire week where they could go on their tablet and watch the chapel service. And that was all. So then that tablet way, they weren't very motivated. There's not content on it. As soon as we had to stop our recreation and our spiritual care programs, it was like, we had a meeting. What are we going to do? Well, we have this option to do live streaming. So all of a sudden we were all brainstorming, when should we be on this calendar and what kind of things are we going to do? And we had the staff that aren't doing their live programming anymore. So we became these content producers, which was so weird, but it just blossomed, that live streaming. So we actually go from, I don't know when it starts, 9 a.m. and then they finish the live programming around 3:30, and then they have gone around to all of the churches in our community, an important part for us as a faith-based place. And since every church had to do video now, they all offer us this material. So from 4:30 till 9:30, they can watch through all these church services every day. It's just like, it's completely remarkable. And we wouldn't have been able to figure out the back end of how you use Vimeo Premiere and how you download off of YouTube and do, like, none of us know this about, and how to make playlists and then how to pull all of that into our live stream. But the team has just been so great with TELUS to help us learn. So it's, it's not something that people are going to want to let go of. So we have to now figure out what we're going to do when the staff are back in their live settings, but maybe Kathrin, you could talk a little bit about the recreation or are you going to ask that, Devon? About the
No, you take over. Thank you. Perfect.
Okay, so the interactive recreation is amazing.
Yeah, so what happened? We had all these tablets that the that TELUS provided, and that some of the seniors didn't want at that point. So our recreation team was able to take them and basically started Zoom calls. So when COVID locked our long-term care sites and the process, we were already up and running in the middle of April, providing these Zoom calls. And our recreation team, what they did was they would use the tablets to call the families, and then they would mirror the images onto a mobile TV that we have. So we've got a 60-inch TV on a cart so that they can wheel into the resident room. And we had, so right away there was video connecting to families. There wasn't that gap of not able to have visitors. And the residents, so there was one story where a family member, and we'd have 2 or 3 family members on, family connecting that they usually didn't happen or happen once a year around Christmas time, where, wherever they were around the world, they could connect as a family with this resident in their room on video chat. And, the resident would be talking to a family member, and the family member had commented on what a lovely shirt he was wearing today. And the resident just lit up and said, "You can see me?" And it just heartfelt.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we have stories of families that are getting together, like gallery view of families and residents with dementia. They have a hard time interacting on one-on-one, but this way they were able to be in the same room per se as their family, while their family was having conversations, just day-to-day catch up and how's it going, and it really felt like this family reunion over video chats. And we've had, so since middle of April, we've had 1,500 video chats. We have enough capacity for up to 10 visits per unit per day, which is just enough for one resident per week. And this is a program that the family they do not want it to see let go. Like this is going to be an ongoing recreation program. We're actually hoping that volunteers can take this on, because it's pretty simple with just calling the family. In the background, we've actually got scheduling software that the family can schedule themselves. So it's all administered in the background by the program and the family. There's not a lot of time that our staff need to take to record or make sure the time slots are available, or the actual scheduling piece of that.
Yeah.
And I love that one piece of feedback there. I think that's very impactful. And for someone like myself, I would never have guessed that a one-on-one Zoom call with somebody with dementia might be very, very challenging for a son or a daughter trying to connect with their mom or dad. But when in a group scenario where the person with dementia can just kind of hang out and spend time with their family, even if they're challenged to communicate, they're still there. They're still part of that love and part of that conversation. So I think that's great feedback, and thank you. And I hope that can resonate with everyone watching this today.
There's actually, as we've started our safe visit program, and we've been running that for a while, those are the one-on-one visits in real life, but you're 6 feet apart. We're finding that there's families that are not preferring that. They're just saying it's not best for our loved one. We prefer the Zoom call. So without that technology, what would we be offering for that? Like it's such a huge connection point for people and for families. It's been amazing to have that. The live streaming, it goes through every single television on our campus, which is, I think, like at least 700. Kathrin might know the numbers more than that, but like at least 700 people. And they have this program. It starts off in the morning and they're, wishing people happy birthday. So kind of reminded me of, like, I'm way older than you, but like when I was little and we watched Romper Room, and Romper Room would say, happy birthday to Barry and Mark and whatever. And you just think, oh, are they going to call my name? And it's kind of like that, right? And then a prayer time and even announcements. And it's just been that's just been a really good way to continue the connection. I have a friend whose mom lives here in assisted living, and she texted me and said, when am I supposed to call my mom now? Because mom is busy. She's doing her chair exercises. She's doing her time in the morning with the devotions. And then she's listening to this and she's doing this recreation. They're all playing bingo. And I don't know mom isn't available. I just thought, well, that's okay. That's pretty good. Yeah.
So Sharon, I would love to dive into that a little bit further. For the viewers out there, what we were able to do for Menno Place is set up a custom channel for them so that using a tablet or a smartphone, they could live stream content into the suites.
Yeah.
So the idea behind that was, how can we help you connect with the residents that are isolated? They can't see anybody else, right? So from a technology partner, we're trying to help address isolation, so mental health, physical health, which Sharon, I'd love for you to jump into next on the exercise program. And then we already touched on it, spiritual health, right? Because during isolation, residents can't go attend church services. They can't go to those social events. So how can we help them stay connected spiritually? But Sharon, I'd love to jump over to the exercise program that you discussed, because you also provided me with some more great insights about maybe some vulnerabilities that your residents have and why your new exercise program has been such a success.
Well, maybe one of the funniest things that happened to me when I first started, I hadn't worked with seniors. My office was right beside the exercise room. And there was a gentleman who came to exercise every single day. He wore his suit that I later learned was the one he would like to be buried in. And he did the treadmill for 20 minutes in kind of a flip-flop shoe. It was just I just couldn't believe, don't you have workout clothing? Well, this age group, they didn't exercise. They didn't go to classes. They don't go to the gym. Like, that's not their world, at least not in our little area. So they just feel this real vulnerability about showing up for exercise class. And I'm going to say particularly the men. I think that there's only ever been one man that comes to the exercise classes. So, the walking group, there were more men, but just the class itself, it just feels like something women do. And so all of a sudden, this is in their suite, and they are doing their own exercises on their own chair in the privacy of their own space. And that's really been a game changer. We were able to get a little bit of analytics. We don't have a strong analytics avenue yet to see how many of these televisions are on and what people are watching. But at one point, there were at least 90 people that were tuned in doing this chair exercises. Well, we've never had 90 people come to chair exercise. So, the recreation therapy group, like, they feel a little like it's a little vulnerable for them because they like to see the capacity of a person. They don't want to just hope that they're okay and not exerting themselves inappropriately or doing the exercises wrong. But they've kind of had to let go of that in this time and just say, hey, people are doing this. They're following along. And none of our staff wanted to be on TV. None of them. So it's been a really big decision and way for them to move forward and get their comfort level. And they've really gotten very, very good at that and connecting as though they're talking to a person, not just talking to, a camera or nothing, because there's nobody in the room when they're doing their exercises. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
If I can add to that, because we have one statistic that just came out and that was our art therapy program. Yeah. So our art therapist, she was in the chapel live streaming her painting a canvas. And so we wanted to know what the interest was of residents that want to paint along. And we actually have 25 now signed up for the program, where we're going to deliver art supplies to their room. And then we're going to, actually there's one on today. We're going to stream while she teaches how to paint this canvas. And it's going to be a 6-week program. And then we're going to have another group sign up for it. And so everybody can watch, but we have numbers that are actually participating and interested in it. So that's phenomenal.
And how about bingo? I heard you have a pretty interesting setup for bingo and prizes.
Yeah, well, bingo is super fun. Everybody has, so we have a delivery system every day, and we deliver the new bingo cards, and everybody has their bingo cards out. They watch bingo, and when they get a bingo, then they call us the recreation cell phone, and she gets their call. They're the first one to get bingo. They get a chocolate bar the next day. So as some sort of treat that suits their needs. But anyway, it's really exciting, right? Because they're right on it and engaged and feel like they have something to do. And then there's an interaction with that afterwards. So yeah, that was really clever. We weren't expecting that. But when you provide them with that backbone of what they could use and how they could use it, and then you let them run with it, they'll go further than, I think, Devon, we went further than what you were thinking. And then our staff are going further than what we could imagine that they're thinking. And they're doing interactive ceramics, the same kind of thing as that art piece where they get their ceramics, they can paint them. The recreation team picks it up. They fire the ceramics in the kiln. All of that, I didn't imagine that when we started a live stream channel. Yeah, it's really special.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to take the chance to shift over a little bit on how you're preventing COVID from getting into the property and becoming a major issue, and how you're using technology to do that.
Mm-hmm. You want to? Maybe I'll start with, we started a registered visitor program, and so I'm so grateful for a team that is able to immediately put things on the internet. We have a very big application that you have to fill out to be a registered visitor. This was for our independent living, so that's about 250. Of our residents that live in our apartments. And so we just wanted to make sure that we didn't have the same amount of people coming and going, stop that frequency, make sure that we have committed people and they understand the protocols. And, a lot of learning has happened in our culture, in our communities since March, but in March, there wasn't a lot of learning. So to write on, check off these things that they were going to comply with was really new. And I think it took us about 10 days to cover all 250. Some people don't have a person that can support them. And so those gaps were brought out, and we were able to put in place, we phoned churches and said, who can you help? Who could help with the grocery purchasing and those kinds of things to keep people in their suites and keep them safe. But I don't think we could. I don't know how we would have managed that by phone and by paper if we just didn't have the capacity to just speak to people. But likewise, we've had a hard time getting people to give us their email addresses because there's been no real reason, families, there's no real reason that they need to hear about, whatever recreation program or whatever's going on. They haven't had that drive to know about it, especially if they're not local and the primary person that's helping their mom or dad. So now all of a sudden the information became so important that the gaining of all of those email contacts became something that was freely given to us. And so we have a very, very robust database now of families and friends. And we just sort of count it that same way. Families and friends, whoever wants to know, whoever loves someone here should be part of the information, web of what we're doing. So yeah, that's I think been one of the key aspects for us being able to keep COVID out of our independent living, which has far more freedoms and less restrictions than anywhere else. Maybe Kathrin has other things.
I was also thinking about the Twitter feed that you have, Sharon, and the Facebook. We've got several different means of communicating with our community, and those were tools that were already implemented way before COVID. But it was, we used our Twitter to kind of notify our friends and family for the outbreaks, the flu outbreaks. But that was it. Like, it was pretty repetitive, and you could see how it, eventually somebody might just ignore those feeds. But yeah, through COVID, just being able to have those tools in place ahead of time too was just so important to be able to communicate, and two ways too, being able to hear the family's concerns and the questions, abundance of questions that we had.
Yeah, we actually have shifted some of our programs because of their feedback. Like, at first we were just going to have, it was called registered visitor. And then it became clear to me that people who are family members have never thought of themselves as a visitor. And so we had to just put some wording in there that, if you're a family member, you're part of, you don't get a pass from this program. Like, this is for all inclusive. But I wouldn't have known that, because I just think you walk in this door and you don't live here, you're a visitor. But that's not how they perceive themselves. And we've had this emergency Twitter account for a long time. And like Kathrin was saying, I just put flu information or stormy weather, hot weather, make sure you drink. Like, it's just, so that people so that they know it's there. It goes to an email address, or it sends an email that shares this, emergency information. But now we are actually using it for emergency information. Like, it's really critical and in real time. So, when I started, we started talking about technology. That's 9 years ago. I came from online communications, online marketing. That's my background. Well, when I came here, I actually had people on the board discourage me and just say, these are old people, okay? They don't know. They're not going to do this. They don't have email. But I think we have, in all of our 700 people, we have under 25 people who don't have an email connection, right? Not them necessarily, but the person that cares for them, who can. And frankly, like, the messaging, if we just tell it to our residents, even in independent living, the clarity of being able to express that to their loved ones, it just hasn't been there. And we've been very, very careful about respecting their independence, that they're the primary person who's caring for themselves and their decision making. So we have never before COVID reached out to their loved ones to communicate in an intentional way, the way we are. It's been really more general, like, things are going great and there's been a barbecue, not this is the message and these are the requirements for protocols. And but we have cleaned up a lot of confusion. Like, one example, we posted a poster beside everybody's suite that has the active screening questions, so that when our staff go provide them with their meal, they can ask the COVID screening questions each time. And so I got a very panicked phone call from a son, and he just said, like, my parents don't have COVID. Nobody on their floor has COVID. Why are you putting up COVID posters? So he didn't know what the poster said, that it's just active screening. But his parents interpreted it as, and they all ripped them down because they thought that this was, we're telling people they have COVID. So we had to make changes with that and then tell the family, these are active screening, right? It's just questions. Oh, well, they can then calm their own loved one down, re-explain it. They have the right information. That's just been a game changer for communication. And it's this two-way street now with families. So it's been very, very good.
I think on that note, situations like COVID, tragedies, community challenges can, in a weird way, be an opportunity to build community and come together and engage with your residents, but also engage with the community and the families. Can you touch on how your Facebook page has helped address concerns from, those that are outside of Menno Place?
Yeah, I mean, so I have a public Facebook page, and the public Facebook page, we have very small messaging. Like it's telling them about the public about pieces of our good things and also COVID concerns. So you can go on there and you'll see that there was a message done for the public just to say that we have no COVID in a recent experience that we had here. But then we have a Facebook family and friends, and that's where a lot of communication happens. And some of our staff who really want to be like on top of what's happening, they've joined that. So it's sort of a couple of ways that we're trying to divide it out so that it's appropriate information for the public, appropriate information, and an avenue for our families. And maybe and that's really been the focus. Like our focus hasn't been how does the public perceive us at this time, except that we know the respect and affection we have in our community. We've been here 70 years. We're on some of the people, we're on the 4th generation of people who are living here. So it's not like this is a small, like this touches a lot of people's lives. But it does calm people to know that there's a way that they can get what they like is insider information. And our CEO is pretty active on our Facebook family page. So they know that, if they're feeling like it needs to be escalated, they can talk to her right there. Like that's really amazing. And it's kept people, they keep each other in check. Like, some people are really angry because there were individuals not wearing masks on the outside and they thought they should be wearing masks, and how come we're not, monitoring that better and telling us it's, and so then we adjusted how we're dealing with masks and making it possible that people can, when they're outside, not wear a mask if they're not within 6 feet of somebody. So we just made changes, and we keep tweaking to be reasonable, or, to be calm, to be kind, those kinds of things. But they tell each other these things on there, and it's taken a lot of weight. It takes a lot of weight of responsibility of communication off. That's been really good. I felt it was a bit risky. We've never done it, that back and forth. Yeah, it's been good.
That's
though.
Good. Thank you, Sharon.
Yeah.
You mentioned change, and I'd like to take the opportunity to chat about change a little bit, because Menno did have to go through somewhat of a drastic, maybe scary change when you did convert to, a digital communication system through our fiber optic network and through your television, right? A big change for residents who typically don't like change. So could you maybe talk about that experience, but also talk about change in general? Because I know there's a lot of apprehension in the industry to make a big change, but when you do change things for the better, when you go digital, when you put the infrastructure in place, it can be a challenge. Maybe chat about those challenges and how you overcame them, and then the benefits that you're seeing now.
You go, Kathrin.
Kathrin, why don't we start with you?
So when we were first, contemplating this change of, cable providers and Wi-Fi install, we knew it was going to impact each one of our residents. And so the communication and personal support, I would say, would be the 2 most important factors. We had endless amount of communication, pre-warning, it's coming tomorrow, it's coming today. Involvement, we did surveys of what channels are your favorites that you can't live without. What channels can you let go? We had the recreation department, we had our life enrichment coordinator, we had receptions, like we had everyone on board, maintenance, housekeepers, so that we can support our residents in this change. And we ended up figuring out that it did end up needing to be a lot of one-on-one, which it's a time-consuming a process, but if you want to be successful, you need to put in that energy and that effort. And so we ended up having lots of TELUS supports as well, with TELUS ambassadors coming on. But just the whole communication piece, I would say, is the number one. So it took us about 6 months to changed the infrastructure, and we had, I think we must have had 12 or 15 TELUS guys come through and remove the old boxes and put in the new boxes, and we had our staff there right along with them to talk to the residents. Sometimes reading a lot of information for them was challenging, so they like the in-person one-on-one. We did end up going into every resident room, I think twice, minimum twice, sometimes quite often on a daily basis for a few weeks, just to show them the remote control and the changes of channels, the Wi-Fi piece, and and even today, like we've got, housekeepers are familiar with helping out and coaching on the TVs and the remote controls. Maintenance is, like it was kind of an all on board change. And, we had some residents that, they did end up losing their favorite channel. There was a means for them to get it by having, to pay for it privately. But others were thrilled with the changes that were made. I think just the commotion of having, new people in and in their hallways and around their suite, that entertained some of them. We always had our receptionists available to, vet the calls and reassure, and somebody will come up to your suite and show you. So, change is not easy for sure. For seniors that have had, their channels, and they knew the channels that they wanted, and what channel they were on, and that was it. They wouldn't touch their TV. But now it's actually our Menno TV channel that they don't want to touch. They're if I change the channel, I might lose this, and I need to stay on this because the next programming is coming, or my bingo is coming. So you gotta outweigh the benefits with the time period of maybe some discomfort.
I think something really important there is Kathrin really provided some great leadership for us in empowering everybody on our staff team to know what to do to help, because and with the attitude of helping, because sometimes somebody's television doesn't work at 5 p.m. or 3:30 p.m. on Friday, and we're all mostly leaving. And some of our staff have done remarkable things to make sure that somebody can have their television over the weekend before somebody comes back, right? Maybe it's swapping out a remote or figuring out, sometimes, people with cognitive decline, they're unplugging things, and it's simple to plug it back in, but it's not simple for them or the family that lives in another province. So just to be prepared that was a big part of, it's not just one person's job, and it's not just TELUS's job, because you're not here. It has to be us taking on you were here at the beginning, but for the long time, it's us taking on that responsibility and understanding the value that television is to a person who doesn't have the same opportunities, especially now with COVID, right?
Yeah, and thank you for that. And I think that, when we say television, it can be seen as a tool. And what Menno Place did, I think, very, very well was use it as a tool, not just for someone to sit there and watch TV, but for communication. Sharon, could you touch a little bit about how you're using that TV platform, the digital platform, not just to stream live content for exercise classes and church services, but also notifications, kind of like a community board?
Yeah, so we had a great time with your staff, who especially Susan. Shout out to Susan, because she was amazing in her training with us. So she trained one of our staff, and we have a whole bunch of videos on how to do it, so that if she's not around, we can create the images that need to be put on there. But that's what we do. We just make some images. We do it in Photoshop, and then you upload them. And so our communications coordinator, Danielle, she's doing that. And so we can just have like very timely messaging. I would say that we have done like a small fraction of what can be done. like there's a whole video interface that we just thought we don't have the energy to take that on yet. But you can have video. And actually in COVID, I made a bunch of videos for families, and that got a lot of positive feedback. It wasn't interactive, but I just went outside and videoed myself. I just didn't like doing it, but just talked about what the announcements are, and families really like that. So I can see us growing that interface, which is when you first get onto the channel, there's a place for video. So right now we just have static images and they slide through, and Susan really helped us figure out size of font, how it looks, because it just, everybody's television's a different size. Some have 75-inch and some have 24-inch. So how do you do it so it's readable? A lot of support. So yeah, that's been really good. We have more people to train, like our receptionists and others, so that we can do those messages more frequently. And now we don't use, do you care about the technology? Now we don't always use Photoshop, because we didn't have that for everybody. It's an expensive software and has a kind of a steep learning curve. So we have a Canva account, and you can just do it online. They can find somebody else's previous images, make changes to them, save and upload. And that's so, but there's lots of things I know that if people in the webinar are interested in the more detail about the technology that we've used, we're happy to share.
That's great. Thanks. So what you're doing is you're creating your own custom imaging and messaging and putting it up through the TV so
Absolutely.
that when residents turn it on, they can get that messaging immediately. They don't need to, call downstairs. They don't need to go down to a community board, where right now we don't really want them to. We want them distance from everybody else. So thanks for sharing.
That's been really good. I also wanted to say, this is a little bit of a different topic, but with our technology, like when somebody books online with our Zoom calls, after they have their call, they get sent a survey, and the survey gives them an opportunity to give us feedback. And I know all of us that are in leadership, or especially at the very front line of communicating with families or with distressed residents, COVID has caused a lot of stress and anxiety, and people can't see their loved one. And sometimes it's easy to just sit in that place where the hardest and most difficult circumstances are the ones that weigh heavily on you. I was just looking at our number of survey comments, like the post Zoom calls, the post safe visit surveys. And that's a system that has allowed us to see the vast number of positive experiences that families are having. And for the leadership to have that in a time of such crisis, and we know that seniors are not thriving in isolation. We knew that before COVID, that isolation and depression and things were difficult, and were even more difficult than maybe a medical diagnosis. And so we knew that before. So now here we are, like, enforcing it. It goes against everything. Like, many times I've said to my team, my enrichment team, this goes against everything that we're trying to do. And so we have to find a way around that to still enrich people's lives. Those surveys results we've made them public for our family and friends, so they can feel how other families are feeling. And it's been super good encouragement for our teams. Yeah.
Okay. A couple more questions before we wrap up. Is there anything that we've missed today? Any other uses of technology that you think are important to highlight for your fight against keeping COVID out and keeping your residents happy?
Well, I know that the next thing we're going to do is we're going to want all of our rooms to be smart rooms. And I've talked to you about that, right? Having people have their own Alexa and their own monitoring system, and ways that they can just do voice activated all of those things. That's obviously what we want to do, and where we want to go with our next piece, and enable people to not have to use a tablet even to be able to get to things. So that's a dream I have. That's coming. Yeah. Okay,
so maybe before we get to the final question, which is moving forward, what are some technologies that you do want to implement that you just touched on? Have you had any learnings? Is there anything that you think that you could have done better prior to COVID to prepare for something like this?
You go, Kathrin.
I think, it was really helpful to have the platforms that we did have. I couldn't imagine trying to implement anything of, that caliber during a pandemic. It just wouldn't work. I think I'm surprised, pleasantly surprised at the adoption of our seniors, that technology is important to them, and some of them are asking for their tablets back, and want to learn more and video chat. So we're definitely growing that. So maybe finding some areas that could have been useful to them, or showed them the usefulness of the tablets, and continuing with those programs. Doing web video calls with the seniors, or having maybe some pre-recorded streaming in the chapel available, because you just never know when they become useful. But it's hard. It's a hard adoption and a priority when you don't have that big push of, we need this now, we needed this yesterday, and priorities get shifted, and so I do think that having the pandemic at the forefront, it has allowed a lot of a change that we've been looking at for a while. Like one of the just recently changes that we've done is emailing of our resident statements. So we would still print them and deliver them, because the residents really didn't have the means of opening them up in an email format. But this all changed it, and it was a requirement, and it was a need, and they understood that mailing and having physical contact between letters and paper was just not the best practice during this COVID. So it was just adoption of that.
Yeah, I think that our staff weren't convinced that a live streaming platform would be equally beneficial or differently beneficial. So when we had it, it never became a priority. It wasn't like one person who could envision that and see the power in it, and so I'm not sure that we couldn't make it a priority. And then same as the family members, they weren't all motivated to help their loved one learn the tablet, because mom doesn't really like anything like that anyway, and so it just wasn't the same thing. The pandemic changed a lot of what we had hoped for, but it also changed, not just our hopes, it changed the actual way that our staff thought, the way that our residents think, the way that our residents support systems think. And I think it just made it, obviously all around things are changing. It's pretty much cashless now. So we can do a whole bunch of things that are different, because society is also changing at the same time, and that's bringing normalcy to some of the things that technology that is there. So yeah, I don't know, we were pretty fortunate to have the Wi-Fi before the pandemic, right? That's obviously, I remember before the pandemic, we didn't have Wi-Fi in our long-term care, and we had a family member who wanted to Zoom in, and his father was palliative reconcile with this person, and the family was scrambling, how do we do it? And I had to sit on a commode in the corner of the room, hotspotting my phone to their tablet while they had intimate conversations at end of life, and just so that they could. And I think, can you imagine what that would be like now in our long-term care, when we have 350 people who would like to have connection? We could never have done what we did. So just taking the right steps and moving forward. For us, it happened before the pandemic. For some of the other care homes here, it's going to be later, but just to do it because it's remarkably beneficial. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you, Sharon. So I guess before we wrap up, any final thoughts, anything that you think is important for you to share with your peers about how they might be able to use technology, prevent a COVID outbreak, but also serve their residents? Maybe Kathrin, we'll start with you.
Sure. I think there's just so many new pieces of technology that have come, and anyone that's in that IT realm, my emails were inundated with check out this infrared camera and check out this automatic receptionist called Alice, and go right, like, so there's all the UV lights that are coming out, and so we really we still don't have a good picture of where we want to move, but we definitely want to adopt some of those pieces, the touchless areas, and using some of the new technology that's become available because of the need during this pandemic. And again, like I've said previously, it's hard to implement anything in the midst of something. So it's really like most of these things are just on the side of my desk going, once I get, a time to breathe, let's see what pieces of this are important to us. Like the staff screening. I know that some of my colleagues and they've, some already have implemented the infrared camera where staff and visitors or anyone that's coming on site can, you can get their temperature right away and it'll alert someone. And I mean, these are all, these were things, kind of fun things to have before the pandemic. They weren't priorities. They weren't, we had smaller things like infection control, processes that we haven't even looked at, and now all of a sudden these IT pieces are becoming that piece of infection control that we need. The two didn't really combine prior, so I'm actually I'm excited to see what the future holds for what the development and enhancements that are coming that IT will allow operationally for organizations to be more efficient and to for infection control standards and surveys or audits, that kind of stuff. As well as in what Sharon touched upon with we're ready to go see one of these rooms that allow our seniors to age in place, that have the sensors or the the Google Home, voice activation, or light bulbs that take temperatures or sensors that let the families know how their loved one is doing. So I'm excited to see what the future holds on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that it's not technology versus personal. And technology is a tool for us to be able to do more than what one person can do. Like I think about just emailing the statements, our billing statements, what the difference in that amount of personal work. And I think our staff were really nervous that, a robot's going to take over my job. Well, if you're here and that we have seemingly endless work, you will have a position. Like there's work for you. This is just an efficiency in one area, so we can do better in other areas as a broader way of doing, better for people, for their personal. And I think if, as you're going through it, if you're thinking about what technology to do and use, it's really just one at a time, like one thing at a time. Added in, I made an app before COVID, and I wanted to launch it, and I wasn't happy with it, and it interacted with our tablet, and it was, it's a failure. It's not the app that we're going to use one day. I don't like it, but it's on the back burner because it's not the most important thing for now for us, but it's there. It'll come. We'll have an app for families, an app for our staff, but those pieces, it's just one thing. Do one thing that's going to be beneficial. One more thing, And that builds to create, a bigger, broader technology. And I think that's encouraging. I've been really encouraged by some of our colleagues locally to look at how they're doing their online bookings, the solutions that they've found. And they don't have the staff team we have, but they've been able to find the right online booking system, and that allows them to do it simply. And maybe it's their receptionist or whomever. And then the next generation, what's challenging for me to think about, my 35-year-old, communications coordinator can do in a tenth of the time, think about it and process it because of just the way that she knows technology. So that next generation, they have to be brought in. They just can automatically know. The younger people on my team have never asked for training on new software. They don't need it. They just have intuitive knowledge about how a software might work, and then they have already learned how to go to Google or whatever, YouTube, and watch YouTube channels. So I think just really looking towards how the future is going to be run by people who have that native language, computer language, that's really important for our care homes. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much. Okay, I think that's enough. We really appreciate your feedback. Great learning for me, and I hope it's a great learning for your peers. So once again, thank you very much, Kathrin. Thank you very much, Sharon. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank
Bye-bye,
you.
everybody.
Bye.